Hello and welcome to live event number 18. My name is Jeff Rolka. The chat is already open. I can see some people getting in some questions and saying hello. The chat is open, so please say hello, introduce yourself, tell me what's going on with your voice, and hopefully, if you've got a question, I can help you out. Good morning to you, Susan. It's nice to see you pop up again. And Aldo, as always, hello. And Kemini Ellis has already posted a question about singing through puberty. And before I dive in, if you've chosen to subscribe, thank you. If you haven't yet, I hope that you'll choose to do so. The link is at the bottom right corner of your screen. And the chat's open. So please say hello. File in a question. Yeah. I do have a couple questions that were emailed in from earlier this week, so I'm going to take those in just a moment. But in regards to puberty, it's going to be different for everyone. Like so many things with the voice, it is different from one person to the next. For someone such as myself, I mean, I certainly went through some changes, but the overall timbre of my voice didn't change too dramatically from when I was a child to when I went through puberty. But it's gonna differ for everybody. Things to hold on to through that change are going to be airflow and engagement. Just keep that in mind. Your voice is going to be really erratic for a while, and on the other side of it, it's still going to be erratic and not settle down for easily a couple years after that. So just hang in there and do the best you can. Hello, Peyton, and hello, Jaheim, and hello, Unlikely Source, and hello, Greg. Welcome back. Welcome. Questions from this week were very interesting. One was, how do I figure out my vocal range, tenor or baritone? In the process for finding out our vocal range, I have resisted putting a video online about this, despite the fact that all the warm-ups now are done in like 4 different range varieties. And I do that because everyone's secondo passaggio, that point of transition, is going to be in a slightly different location. And some of the exercises, I want them to go right up to that point without going over it. And others, I definitely want to go through it. So knowing where that point is very important. That point also says a lot about what vocal fosh you are, what vocal range you are. The thing is that the difference between many vocal types is very, very small, and it's only one small aspect of figuring out what your fosh or vocal range is. For example, there are tenor voices that have their secondo passaggio there. That's E flat above middle C. That is also a very typical place for baritones to have a secondo passaggio as well. Other aspects of their voices are going to be you have to take those into consideration when you try to determine fosh. If you are trying to figure out your vocal range, I approach it from 2 different ways. First of all are the sirens, the ooh. It's very important that you be in cricothyroid dominant when you start and thyroarytenoid when you get to the bottom. I'll make my transition point a little bit more obvious this time. Ooh, and you can hear it click over. That point is where the cricothyroid muscles are giving it up and the thyroarytenoid are taking control. And we can find that point in our voices by going from the top down and then working our way back up towards it and just narrowing it down. So like in the how to sing over the break exercises, you'll have this you. You can hear that's very cricothyroid dominant, kind of hooty sounding. You. There it's a little bit brighter sounding. That's my thyroarytenoid voice. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. I know where those points are. I know where my secondo passaggio is. If you're just figuring it out, what you may find happens is that when you do your descending stuff, you may want to pull it down. You. Instead of letting it be naturally where it wants to be thyroarytenoid dominant. You. And here I'm getting into that range. where my thyroarytenoid voice is really taking control. Conversely, you work it up. Getting closer and closer. We never want to push. We don't want to push up into that upper register. We want to find the point where it's teeter-tottering from one muscle group to the next. And that will have a lot to say about what your vocal fosh is, because you will then have found your secondo passagio. Unlikely source. Jeff, any advice on hearing yourself on stage when surrounded by a very loud band? That is a never-ending issue for people that play with bands, and I think all of us who've played with a band to some degree or another struggle with it. I've had that issue when I've had bands that we were all in a band together, and I've had it when I've been hiring people just to play just to back me up. The first thing is to ask people to turn down as much as possible, but oftentimes it's not possible depending on the drums. If the drums are mic'd in the club, then you have a little bit of latitude there. If they're not, then your hands are tied, because they have to be able to be heard throughout the club. But getting guitar players to turn down even a little bit will be helpful. Same thing with bass. Similar with the drums, if you can get them to play a little softer. Obviously, if you've got your wedges in front of you, then trying to get up on the mic as much as possible, singing with a good full sound without pushing, will be really, really helpful, because that's going to let the engineer get the mic hot without getting it too hot. If you can wear earplugs and you can stand it, then you'll be able to hear yourself, but that can be very disorienting when you're getting used to it, and it can really, really mess up the mix. Ideally, in-ears of some variety. They don't have to be wireless, but nowadays you can get systems where you are basically controlling your own mix in your in-ear headphones, and they're just not terribly expensive, $100, $200, something like that. And you will save your hearing and be able to hear yourself much, much better on stage than with wedges or anything like that. Because even with the wedges, even if the wedges are pumping back at you enough to be heard over the band, it's such a high volume environment, it's quite likely you'll still push. So best case scenario, in-ear monitors. Worst case scenario, probably earplugs and a wedge that's getting, on for, a commensurate volume to the rest of the band. But and having sung with earplugs, it's not ideal, but it will save your hearing, and it might help a little bit. Oh, Susan, I was just discussing where that point of passagio is. To continue with that a little bit, of course, there's that you, and then ascending towards it. But the key part is to make sure that you are neither pulling the cricothyroid muscles down nor pressing the thyroarytenoid muscles up. And those are the two habits that come into play when we're trying to determine range. So what you'll get a vocalist who is trying to find their secondo passagio, and they'll start something here, you, and they'll have pulled their cricothyroid muscles all the way down to the bottom of the range, like I just did. We call it throat lock, where you're getting locked into one mode of singing over the other, and you have to break that habit and get into the habit of switching where it feels most comfortable for your voice. Once you start doing that switchover point, then you can begin to match resonances and get the transition to be much, much smoother. And that's what we get, and that's why when I sing something like keeping in mind that I just sang that note and my point of transition was there. I'm singing right through it, but by matching resonances, everything sounds the same, or as near as it's going to be, really. Yeah. So, but but how do you find it? It takes some patience. It takes some practice. Honestly, this is where a teacher is really, really helpful, because they're going to hold you to being in the appropriate muscle group in the appropriate range of your voice. Unlikely source, I speak from frustrating experience, including last evening, and I'm sorry to hear it because it is frustrating. I hope that you did not get too much vocal fatigue from that. That's what always happened to me, despite all the practice and all the training too. When it really got better is when I started using in-ear monitors. How can you sing from your diaphragm? That's an excellent question, and I appreciate that. The diaphragm is an involuntary muscle. I suspect that is what you are alluding to in your question. You have to learn to use the surrounding muscle groups to influence its behavior. In appagio, we spread the rib cage. This draws the diaphragm down. And then we use the supporting musculature, the rectus abdominis muscles, the intercostal muscles in conjunction with the rib cage, and the inner and outer oblique muscles to hold the space open so the diaphragm stays in this descended position. And that suspends the air column, which gives us good engagement, that gives us appagio. So it's more about suspension than really, really pushing. The rectus abdominis muscles are lifting to interact with the diaphragm. But again, we can't make the diaphragm consciously do anything. We have to use all these surrounding structures to influence its behavior. Aldo, I was checking some photos from the producer of The Weeknd, and in the section of vocalis, he had a section named ad libs. What is ad libs? Thanks. Ad libs, riffing, improvisation, making stuff up. So, The Weeknd. I'm not sure what The Weeknd is. That's like I'm thinking of like a television show or something, but I don't think that's what you're talking about. But yeah, ad-libs, one might say that you're ad-libbing when you make up a little riff that goes between two sections of a song, or if you're kind of doing a little melody thing, the melody goes, E, and instead you sing, E, and then get back to the bottom there as it did. I did a little ad-lib. That's all. Naveed music. How do I hit high notes at baritone range? I assume you mean as a baritone vocalist. Please correct me if I'm wrong. You have to learn to make this transition through the secondo passagio. That will be the most effective way to extend your range well into the area where tenors typically sing. If you're singing like most baritones, now you're talking like 2+ octaves of range, which would be fantastic. So yeah, it's all about making a smooth transition. That transition for the baritone vocalist is going to be somewhere just above middle C. Think, D above middle C, D, I suppose that's D4, E flat 4, something like that. Somewhere in there, you're going to have your transition point. And so that process that I mentioned earlier today, now for you, those exercises would start a little lower. You might start in the key of F major, F above middle C, C, middle C, I should say, the rest of it. And then make sure that the top note is really open sounding. You, and work your way down. You. But you really have to be sure that the top note and the top note alone is in that cricothyroid dominant singing voice, and the remainder of the arpeggio is in thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. And then take some scalar patterns and work your way up to the secondo passagio, but not through it just yet. So again, assuming it's around D4-ish, you might start an E flat major with a B flat right below middle C as your high note. Now it's important to start close to it because we want to try to be in that lighter area of the thyroarytenoid dominant voice. We're kind of laying the groundwork here. We're learning what it's going to feel like to get ready to make that transition. So we want the vocal folds to be a little bit lighter here, not as heavy with the thyroarytenoid dominant voice. And you practice the descending parts, you practice the ascending one. Eventually, you'll do, and actually, Susan, this applies to you as well, although the range would be different. When you've got a pretty good idea of where the secondo passaggio is, that point of transition, then start doing ascending exercises. Again, insisting that the top note be cricothyroid dominant. You, 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 you. You, 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 you. When you're really solid with the ascending, go to a triad. This narrows the interval that you have to get the transition right within, right? You, 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 you. Once you can do that, now start doing a descending scale. I usually, when I'm working with someone on this, you have to work with the vocalist and ascertain what's going to work best for them. There's almost always a little bit of trial and error in this. So sometimes something like you, 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 you works well. Sometimes something like you, 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 and you let them change to the E vowel where you know they should be thyroarytenoid dominant, because the E will typically force the voice to narrow somewhat, and that can that can force them to flip down onto thyroarytenoid dominant singing. Little extra bonus trick there. Yeah. Check is yes. Thank you, Greg. Oops, I scrolled the screen and now it's... All right. Gerald Ryan, hello. Hello, good to see you. Greg, I've been working on that for most of the summer and my head voice is really good. Hey, that's awesome. I'm very glad to hear that, Greg. 24/7 sketch. I have taught myself to sing after having a pretty good underground career with major labels. However, finding a particular vocal escapes me. I had my career in Europe, electronic music. Now I'm starting to gig in soul jazz. By the way, I don't actually have a vocal coach. What is it? Are you asking a question? I'm happy to help, of course. I'm just curious. It's interesting to hear what's going on. And I would encourage you to share more if you feel so inclined. Yeah. Let's see, where am I? Aaron, can you explain to us how to be happy with your own voice and not compare to others' voices? Well, for me, at some point, I just started to really, really appreciate what I could do, and I stopped caring as much about what other people could do and how their voices sounded. It wasn't anything particularly conscious. It probably came out more out of my just the practice that I go through in terms of singing and writing my own music, and also in doing covers. Really, really, it was hard at first to kind of let go of this idea that it should always be in the original key. But the more I listened to other people singing covers, the more I thought I would allow myself to do it, even if I thought the vocalist who originally cut it and I were similar, that our vocal ranges were going to be similar, and that I should be able to do it. Operative word in that phrase, should. So once I allowed myself the luxury to reinvent the songs however I wanted to, sometimes I ended up in similar keys, sometimes I ended up in just all over the place. It stopped mattering. And in that practice, I stopped kind of caring as much about what other people had done and started to really, really appreciate what I could do with my own voice. However, there's always speaking as, if I may say so, an artist and singer. Part of what it is to become aware of one's voice and how we use it is to get into the process of awareness, and your awareness at some point starts to get a one or two steps ahead of what you're currently capable of creating. And the thing is it tends to stay out in front. And so there's a certain feeling of, I can always do this a little bit better. I can always go a little further. I can always be a little bit more expressive. I can always be a little bit smoother through the secondo passaggio. I can always do a little bit more. And the good thing about that, for me, in my experience, is that typically when I listen to my recorded voice, it sounds way better than I remember it being. So if I go and listen to a recording of myself, it's a pleasant surprise, because my memory of it and my memory of the experience of it can differ quite greatly when I'm in the moment. And I work very, very hard at trying not to be judgmental of myself when I'm in the moment of singing and performing, because it's just very detrimental. So how do you be happy with your own voice? Find out I would ask myself what I love about singing. What is it that you love about singing? Why are you singing? And if it's beauty, what form does that take? Is that the beauty of a long, beautiful legato line? Is it the beauty of like incredibly beautifully articulated but sung through phrases such as you'd find in a great musical theater vocalist? Or is it a vocalese where it's this purity of vowel sound that's phrased so elegantly over, measure after measure of music? Like, what is it about your voice and about what you sing and what you are singing that you love so much? And then go to that thing and keep on going to that thing. And I think that's how we find our own voices and how we can learn to really love our voices too. Unlikely source, you are very welcome. 24/7, by the way. I read that. Greg, hey Jeff, at the top of my falsetto range, around F5 is baritone. Yes, sir. My larynx rises and I feel lots of strain. Is there anything I should be doing about this? Yes. Let me see. Well, ideally that's going to stay down. But boy, in that range. Can you tell me what kind of phrases you're singing on that? Tell me what you're doing. Which exercises or which videos you're using. I have a few thoughts about how you might approach that, but I'd like to know a little bit more about how you're already working with it. Unlikely source. Pushing is a perpetual problem, especially when the sound system isn't of the first order. Any thoughts on how to trust your voice's projection? I wouldn't worry about projection at all into those conditions. However, that being said, boy, in those kind of volume, you have this is those situations where you have to sort of trust that what you have practiced and what you have rehearsed is going to be right. And you have to rely on the physical sensations of how you are singing to make sure that you're in the right area. And it's getting really dark in here, isn't it? I'm sorry. Let me turn on a light here, folks. I do apologize. I didn't mean to be sitting in the dark like that. Maybe this will help a little bit. It's like the creature from the Black Lagoon back here. That's a little better. My wife and I are experimenting with we're not using artificial lighting in the house right now, and I do these live events from my office, and I just don't have any lights turned on. But I'll open up this window. There we go. Hopefully that's better. Let me see if that's better or not. Sorry. There we go. That's better. Okay. Where was I? Oh, right. Um, yeah, you really have to trust that what you've been practicing is going to come out properly. Things to clue into when you talk about projection, think about the singer's formant. So that's an area of resonance between 2K and 5K, depending on the voice type. If you've worked in a recording studio, you've had recordings done, if you've asked the engineer, or if you've engineered it yourself, if you ask the engineer to increase the voice's presence without increasing the volume, they will have adjusted the 2K to 5K band, and we refer to that as the singer's formant. That's that buzzy sense, that thing. So if you've practiced the NG exercise, which is on the channel, the you'll get a feeling of resonance of some people think it feels like it's warmth. Some people say it's a resonance of some kind in the mask, and that's what one of the videos is called, How to Sing in the Mask Voice, or Mask Resonance, or something like that. And being aware of that resonance will help with the projection, because that's going to cut through. You're going to have to rely on your sound man for the mix. I mean, but the projection, that singer's formant will do more within the mix to help with projection than sheer volume or anything like that. Maz, hello, it's good to see you here. Jaham, how can I tell the difference between my mix and head voices? That's an awesome question. The mix voice, those terms get used interchangeably a lot in the vocal world. When I talk about mix voice, I am talking about the zona de passagio. This is the point where the thyroarytenoid muscles and the cricothyroid muscles are almost equal in controlling the vocal fold, and it can feel very uncertain when you're getting used to it. The head voice is when the cricothyroid muscle is the predominant controller of the vocal muscle. Now, the thing is that in reality, we're almost always singing with a combination of thyroarytenoid and cricothyroid musculature. We're rarely are we ever entirely committed to one or the other. So we're almost always in some form of mix. It's just that when you're down here, I mean, it's thyroarytenoid dominant without any question. And when you're singing around here, once I get up to those high notes, I'm really, it's quite clearly cricothyroid. You may be, if you're trying to push your thyroarytenoid muscles higher and higher, then it's possible that you're delaying the point that you go through the transition over the secondo passaggio. But honestly, depending on how long you've been at it, I think it kind of does feel the same for quite some time. It's just that when you're really in the mix, when you're really in the zona de passaggio, it will feel incredibly uncertain for the first, honestly, year or so that you're practicing there. And it depends how much you practice as well too. But once you get past that, it becomes much more comfortable, and you don't notice it nearly so much. So, yeah, how long have you been at it for? How long have you been making that transition through to your cricothyroid dominant singing voice? Now I've lost where we are here. Oh, there we are. Maz, using Appagio, my support and tone have improved greatly. Excellent. However, I found that I'm struggling to sing softly. Singing soft is perhaps one of the most challenging things that we have to do as vocalists. What I would start doing is, if we, I know I owe the channel some mezzo de voce exercises, which would be excellent, and is what I'm thinking about for you. Obviously, part of the thing to do is to practice volume changes through or in a comfortable range, like in a very, very comfortable range, keeping in mind that there's only so soft we can sing given the range of our voices. So if it's in a really comfortable place, then I have a lot more latitude with how softly I can sing as compared to when I'm in the zona de passagio or I'm up above the secondo passagio. First thought though for you, and I would hate this. I wouldn't go to this every single time, but you may have noticed it in my voice. I'm not sure how clearly. I believe the audio is reasonably good, but you may have noticed that I actually allowed for a little partial adduction of the vocal fold there. I didn't fully adduct the vocal fold, so that too has a certain volume lower boundary if I'm fully adducted. However, if I allow a little bit of partial adduction there, I can get a little bit softer. And that, if you can hear it at all, it's such a small amount of little air that's seeping past the vocal fold. And that can be a kind of quick and dirty way to get a little bit lower if you wish. And the same thing would be true higher up. It's just that you have to be careful that you don't allow so much additional air to flow over the vocal fold that it knocks your technique off and you start sliding into a falsetto tone production when you don't wish to. Although The Weeknd is a Canadian singer, has the most trained voice in pop music. Oh, I have to check this out. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. That's cool. There's some amazing vocalists that are happening in Canada right now. I believe Patrick Watson is from Canada, and I've been listening to him a lot lately. I think it's beautiful. He has a beautiful voice. He does not sing the way I would choose to sing, but I appreciate it as an artistic expression, and he does a beautiful, beautiful job of it. Harmony, I love harmony. The minute that you incorporate harmony into anything you do, you increase the value proposition by several fold. So if you're singing a really, really great song that you wrote and you add a harmony vocalist, it just doesn't get twice as much better. It gets like 4 times better. Harmonies are fantastic, and it is perhaps one of my favorite things to do. I love singing harmonies. It kind of just doesn't matter what the context is. It's so much fun, and such a beautiful way to add to the music, I think. To be consistent. Thank you, 24/7 Sketch, for finishing that thought. Consistency. You're very welcome. Thank you, 24/7. I will definitely. The chats are always fun. I think you're already probably peeled off by now, but that's cool. What do we got here? Okay. But consistency, we have to practice to be consistent. Consistency comes with repetition and practice. However, practicing well, we have to practice well. If we're practicing incorrectly, then we most likely won't ever achieve the kind of potential that we're looking for. That's a big reason. That is perhaps the main reason why I was drawn to Appagio, when I'd had so much breath tutelage for such a long time, and it just didn't do what it was supposed to do. And despite, I was already teaching voice and continuing to study as I do. It just wasn't as consistent as it ought to have been. And that's when I started doing reading and found Appagio, and that's when everything changed. And by the way, 24/7 Sketch, if you are still there, that is what I would... If you're looking for consistency, it's about practice, and Appagio and the practice thereof did more for my consistency than anything else I have ever done. Ken Money Ellis, how can you stop cracking? And how can you so... I don't see what that was, what the end of that was. Cracking, well, of course. Oh, how can you sing better? Practice is what it is, and practicing wisely. About the cracking, I'm afraid if you're in puberty, there's probably not much you're gonna do about that. If you're not in puberty, cracking is indicative of an imbalance. There's either too much vocal fold engagement, and not enough airflow, or the opposite. And that changes where we are within our ranges. So we have to learn how a neutral sounding vowel is produced throughout the different ranges of our voices, and that's how we can keep from cracking. Jaheim, it depends on what you consider a good singer. That is correct. Whatever's on, you're very welcome. Unlikely source, what you said about judgment really resonates. It's hard to be zen when you're focused on results rather than simply being in the moment and accepting of the content. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, yeah, it is fun. It's an interesting experiment, with candles and all that sort of stuff. Unlikely source, if that makes sense. I think it stems from investing so much of your self-worth in your performance instead of being copacetic with whatever comes. Hard to do for your typical Yank male, innit? Yes. Yes, it is. That was what that resonates a lot with me about finding one's self-worth in performance and how you perform. That was something I struggled with for a long time. A long, long time. Jay, hello. How about improving head voice without strain? I'm a baritone. I get stuck while going higher. Are you getting stuck below the secondo passaggio? If that's the case, then making that transition smooth is what's going to get your head voice to improve without straining. Gerald Ryan, hello, I have a question. What's the proper moisture when I sing sitting down? Can you demonstrate it? Do you mean posture? I'm thinking you probably mean posture, not moisture when you're sitting. I could be wrong. It will vary somewhat from person to person. The main thing is it's going to be a little bit difficult to stay in the frame here, I think. Let me flip over to see the frame. Yeah, you can't see the keyboard so well. Then you're not going to be able to see me if I do that. The thing is that I like to sit up. My back, there's some space. There's space between my back and the back there, so I'm not leaning up against it like I'm seated. The main thing is that I want to get this to be a 90-degree angle. What that will have the effect of doing is it's going to draw you quite a bit closer to the keyboard. But what it does allow you to do is, pardon me, you'll have your hands in a fairly neutral position with a 90-degree bend in the elbow. With the proper height of your stool, you'll have a 90-degree angle in your knees, and I like to be quite a bit out onto the edge of my stool so that I'm really, really upright. It will be tempting to rock your back and arch your back too much, so be conscious of that your back stays more flat, and that should be a bit that should help you get into the zone, into the right area, so that from there you can tweak it a little bit to be a bit more comfortable. But it is quite an upright position. This mic is too low for me. It should really be more up here. But I keep it low so that you can see my full face without me being hidden behind a mic while I'm talking all day and stuff like that. Halsana Greg, my high falsetto notes usually happen in scales when I warm up. I just do 5 note scales higher and higher. Just through your head falls. By the time I get to an F, I find myself squeezing. Try octave arpeggios instead. So start off with some variety of lip trill, you're finally getting higher up, really, really insist that stay. You want to keep that open sound. If you can move it to the super lip trill, I would recommend you do that as well. And that should give you, that kind of engagement with those exercises should give you enough release here for the larynx to stay low. When you can get that happening, then try an oo or an ah vowel, or maybe a, but think not so much oo actually, more ah, o, or a. The wider vowels. That's going to help you to keep that in a lower position from the start. Greg. I can sing to E flat 5 in falsetto without any strain, but after that it has an increasing strain. It is getting really up there. I mean, F5, F sharp 5 is quite up there. But try the octave arpeggios and then start looking at 5-note scales that are scalar. Unlikely source. I'm making slow, uneven, but discernible progress on that score. It's such a high when I can accomplish that for even a short while. As the men say, don't come easy. Yeah. I can remember, I'm sorry, I'm just briefly reviewing like performances where I've felt that magic happen. It's so wonderful. It is in some respects like a drug. Jaheim, I think about 2 years. Right. So yeah, I would actually, if you've been working on your head voice for 2 years, I would expect that to start. I would expect it to start feeling a bit more natural for you at this point. There are a couple of videos on the channel that talk about resonance. It would be interesting to see if I don't know if you've found them or not, but if you search my channel and use the word resonance as a keyword, check out those videos, because the ones they're meant to help you balance the resonance from below the secondo passaggio to above the secondo passaggio. And the reason why I suggest this is because in the initial stages of learning to sing above our break or sing above the secondo passaggio, the practice is to really emphasize the differences of the voice. That's why those exercises, like in the How to Sing High Notes video that I did, you, there's a real dramatic difference between those two sounds of my voice. And over time, as the position, as your ability to stay in the appropriate range becomes more concrete, you can start to match the resonances more closely. And I think that might make it clearer to you about the difference between the mix area, that very narrow band where the thyroarytenoid and cricothyroid are kind of sort of balancing out, to when you really are in the more secure cricothyroid dominant singing position. Check that out, and maybe pop in at another chat or something like that, and yeah, we can talk about that again. So Roku, welcome back. I have a question. I'll get to that in a second. Maureen, hi. I only discovered you last week, and your teaching videos are superb. Thank you very much. Your style is so generous and easy to follow. I have found you just at the right time. Excellent. Well, welcome to the chat and welcome to the channel, and thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate that. What type of voice, continue on the Zoroku's comment. I should probably just scan down and read those so it doesn't get so confusing. What type of voice or common for a person who doesn't know their voice type? Well, If I'm going to generalize, the most common female vocal range is the mezzo-soprano. So mezzos are that's what you typically would assume a female vocalist is until you find out otherwise. For the male vocals, it's the baritone. That's those are the two most common types of voice that you will find. But that's again, there are finer delineations even within those vocal fascias. Whenever I'm fond of saying that whenever you generalize, you are inherently wrong. So, but that's about it. That's what are considered to be the most common voice types. At Maureen, yes, Aldo's talking to Maureen. And Maz, thanks, Jeff. That was very clear. Excellent. The specific issue was in a recording session last week. Producer wanted me to sing How Insensitive with a fairly breathy sound. I just couldn't do it. Yeah, almost all of the work on my channel is about learning to have a neutral sounding voice. It's what I consider to be a starting point. And then from there, you can begin to color and do different affectations. That's why you don't see a lot of videos about, special effects or, singing, like such and such a person or with a breathy voice or anything like that. Because my focus is to get you guys the information so that you can be in a position to make a decision to go whichever direction you wish. And that is a well-adducted, balanced sound. From there, I can be breathy if I wish. Or I can be a little heavier. But I have to know where the middle ground is before I can then go off. And that also informs my decisions as I expand outwards with my range. Jaheim, how can I sing polyphonic overtones louder? That is an awesome question. And off the top of my head, I don't know. I would have to think about that. And you might have to get some specialist training. Someone asked me a couple weeks back, I think it was I can see his icon about singing like C#8 or something like that. Like it's off the piano. And there's only one human that I'm aware of, a male vocalist that can do that. And honestly, you'd probably have to talk to them. It was incredible. It's like Adam. I'd have to look it up again. But anyways, yeah, I'd have to look into that and get back to you. Peyton, hello, Jeff. I'm going to audition for choir soon. What specific preparations can I do to prevent voice cracking? Be very, very disciplined in your practice. I don't know when your audition is, but practice every day. Stay well hydrated. Get awesome rest, not just good rest, but awesome rest. If you don't yet have your audition pieces, get them sooner than later. If you need an accompanist, get that sorted out much sooner than later so you have more than adequate time to practice with them. Learn what the requirements of the audition are. So if you have to sight read or anything like that, know that well in advance so that you can practice to do those things. That's a pretty good start, I'd say, right there. Yeah. If you do that, I think you'll probably be in pretty good shape. Unlikely source, perhaps an odd question, but do you wear your specs on stage? Related to that, do you have your lyrics with you, or do you memorize them? I ask because I hate my glasses and don't wear them when performing, so I have to remember them, which is a beneficial exercise rather than using the crutch of a lyrics printout. Would you agree? Yes, I don't. I'm only wearing glasses this evening because I had to take my contact lenses out. I typically always wear contact lenses. There's a couple of videos from some time ago where I talk about a contact lens malfunction. Not really the case because we're not using artificial lighting. I, taking my contact lenses out once it gets dark here, it becomes very treacherous because I don't want to lose them down the sink or something like that. So I'm taking my contact lenses out a little bit earlier. Um, but for my own shows, like if I'm doing my own personal music or covers that are part of what I would call like an artist's set, 45 minutes to an hour, give or take, then everything is memorized. I don't go on stage with anything but the instruments that I need and the associated equipment. When I've been in cover bands where I'm playing like 3-hour sets, or in 45 minutes and a 15-minute break and another 45 and then another 45 and sometimes another 45. When I'm doing those gigs, I take music on stage. Um, if I were in a full-time cover band with a certain repertoire that we were like, if we were an 80s tribute band or something like that, I would make the effort to commit that to memory, assuming we were gigging enough to warrant it. I don't like going on stage with music if I can help it, but in the performance traditions that I trained in, it was okay. We did all the time, so I'm not that. It doesn't bother me all that much. It's more just that it gets in the way of connecting with people that are oftentimes right in front of me or something like that, particularly like in the cover band situation. Performing. Remember, that's right. Maureen, super lip trill. Please, can you show that again? Sure, yeah. I love the super lip trill. You might have to, stick with it for a little while. But basically, you just grab and pinch and you pull apart. I always think it looks like, if you've seen the movie Brazil, there's this like really disturbing scene where I think he's giving her like a facelift, and it's bad. It's I'm sure it's on YouTube. Just search for Brazil facelift scene. Anyway, you grab and pull, and obviously you can pull only a little bit so that it's not so hard, or you can pull more and it'll make it harder. And that's what it is. Now, Haim, at what point does the voice reach whistle register? I just looked this up the other day. So it's going to vary from vocalist to vocalist, because when you're the definition of what whistle register is when the epiglottis closes over the vocal fold, and it literally becomes like a whistle. It's not so much that the vocal folds are vibrating and producing the pitch, although because the epiglottis closes over the vocal fold, it's very, very difficult to observe what's happening in there. Pardon me for a moment here. So that is going to vary, but I believe it's around the sixth octave, generally speaking. Excellent, Zoroko. Gerald Ryan, thank you, Jeff. It's 1:30 a.m. Have sweet dreams, Gerald Ryan. I really appreciate the fact that you make it out to these live events, and it is so early in the morning, late at night, early in the morning, depending on your perspective. Unlikely sort, it's good to chat with you. I'm usually not able to be online at this time. Oh, that's great. You know what? Of course, I knew I recognized your the username. All right, cool. Props for taking time to interact with this group, folks. Thank you very much. Gerald Ryan, thank you. You're very welcome, Gerald Ryan. Peyton, thanks, Jeff. I've already prepped my acapella piece. Excellent. Should be fine as my voice doesn't crack. Excellent. Mike, I'm a tenor and am attempting to learn Anthem from Chess. There are a few top Gs in the music. When associated with the word when, it seems to deflate my breath and comes out weak. Any tips? Yes. There's a couple things that could be happening there. One could be the vowel focus. So think in that. Watch out for if the WH is too aspirated, wah, 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 it will tend to pull you off the vocal fold, and that will obviously wreak havoc on your delivery of the line. So be conscious of that. Deflate my breath. That really makes me suspicious around how the H, if you're aspirating the H, because that's what it can feel like when you, if you're normally staying well adducted with the vocal fold, but an H aspirates it. And what I mean by that is that the H's will separate the vocal fold. And if that happens, then it can really like take all the wind out of your sails, and it can feel like everything is slid off the vocal fold, and it tends to slide into a falsetto tone production at that point. But even if it doesn't slide into falsetto, it can still have a very deleterious effect. So watch that H. Last thought is that to be careful about staying out of the diphthong, the partially phonating N at the end of that. Make sure you're staying in the vowel syllable until you're ready to end that word or go on to the next one. Additionally, I'm not remembering the phrase that you're referencing right now, but additionally, you can think about putting the N of the when on the next word rather than attaching it and breaking the phrase. So if it was like when you know, then instead of singing when you, sing when you. Combine the N with the Y, but I don't recall the exact phrase right at the moment. Maureen, you're welcome. You're welcome, Jaheim. Mike, word is where. Oh, where? Same vowel, same issue with the aspiration between the WH. R's in some respects are more sinister than N because they can be harder to hear. So it's that where, if you find yourself elongating the diphthong, avoid that and put the R onto the next word. Soroku, you are welcome. Maz, you are very welcome too. Yes, we are wrapping this up right at 7, and that is fantastic. Thank you for all your questions. There was one other question. Robret apparently left a comment on last week's live event. For some reason, couldn't see the chat, and I haven't seen the name pop up, so I have to assume that is the case too. And I apologize for taking all the live event to get to it, but it's basically a question about Bel Canto technique and my thoughts on it. And I think it's fantastic. I think most vocal techniques are repackaging of it. Thank you, Susan. You take care as well, and I look forward to seeing you next week as well. Bye. Bel Canto technique is often repackaged in a variety of different ways. What I'm working with on the channel is my understanding of Bel Canto as discerned from the teachings of Richard Miller, Richard Jennings, and Megan Dibble. I also have a background in more contemporary vocal instruction that I learned from people who are versed in that instruction. I'm not saying it by name because it's very, very delicate to say what it is, unless you are like stamped with their approval. So I don't say it by name, but I think you probably understand what I'm talking about. You have a great week as well, Greg. Thank you for your questions, and I hope those help. And please let me know how it goes. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different schools of Bel Canto and a lot of offshoots of it. And to me, it is the technique for singing with a well-balanced, healthy sound to the voice that you can use for your entire life without any kind of caveats. You're not going to need to take regular time off. You're not going to deal with a terrible amount of vocal fatigue on a regular basis. You are just going to have a beautiful sounding voice, which is what the name is, and you'll learn to use it and keep on working on it until the cows come home, as they say. So those are my thoughts on Bel Canto. I think it's just as applicable to pop, rock, and folk as it is to singing classical music, and I am a happy practitioner of it as I understand it, and look to continue to learn more and more and more as the years wear on. Jaheim, I can go from chest voice to mixed voice, but my voice disconnects when I try to go to whistle register. Neck them. Probably. But most of the people that I hear using whistle register, I don't really know. I don't know how much of a connection there is because there's such a difference in the way that the epiglottis is functioning in that range of your voice. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I mean, the examples that I watched last week, there was a pause before entering that range. Maureen, have mastered the superliteral. Excellent. I definitely have improved my mix since listening to you. It has taken ages to smooth my voice out, and your tips are the icing on the cake. Yes, practicing every day is key, and I congratulate you for it. And thank you for your kind words. I'm really glad that the tips and exercises and things like that are working for you. I'm going to bid you all a fond farewell from here in England. It's time to say goodnight. Thank you very, very much for watching. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing, and hopefully we'll see you again. Bye.